Hey, this is Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. Today is Wednesday, October the 17th. This will be our chart lesson for today. I'm trying to wrap this up early today. It was an interesting day. We pretty much had this channel here on the way up, and this was your high side stuff. And you can see we started to kind of drift away from it here early this morning. Then we had this sell-off that really probably threw everybody. It threw me. I really thought we'd probably turn down here, but you see we never got a trigger. The first time this thing turned back down was way out here. Notice how no break before any bar until you got back above the EMA, and that probably trapped a lot of people, and they just kept pushing it up till we tested that high. But this was the first break of the trend line, and that's what you got to keep in mind. You know, as hard as it is to buy this down here, that's what you got to do. And I know that I actually bought one tick below this, and it came all the way back, and then when it closed here with this negative bar, I went ahead and closed the trade and lost a couple of ticks when I should have held on, because I was afraid we were going to bump off this trend line and turn back down again. And you know, usually when you get a leg that strong that comes down, you almost always get a second leg. But you see it did that here, and it did that here. And but you know, if I'd have stuck to the rules when it broke the trend line here, I would have known to hang on. And but I talked myself out of it. I didn't want this thing to turn back down and rock it on down. We had a overnight gap down here, somewhere down here, and you know, I think everybody probably thought that's where we were heading, or a lot of people did. And you probably, like me, that's where I was thinking we were heading, and I thought we would probably make another leg down after that big bearish leg, but it just didn't happen. And that's why you don't try to second guess the market. I should have hung on until we at least broke below another bar, and I could have ridden this thing at least all the way. Once you get back above the EMA, then there's a chance we're going all the way up. And if I'd have held on through this bar, I probably would have just held on. And but I bought at the right place, and I gave it enough room, but I really thought we were going to turn back down. So anyway, let's talk about the trades. The first entry was right here this morning. And why did we enter here? We had a double bottom. This was the breakout area, and we tested it once. We went higher, we pulled back, and we tested it. Notice all those overlapping bars. And then we broke lower. And what happened when we broke lower? We fail, and we come back up. And there's enough room here. This has been a huge move down, much like this one. You're way away from the EMA. There's plenty of room to scalp out, and it took it a minute to take off, so it was a little bit scary, kind of like this one. But sometimes, you know, you just got to put your stop down here and keep moving it up. At the very least, if you moved it up below each bar, you wouldn't have got stopped out till right there, so you'd still made a couple of ticks. But you got to figure we're going back to the EMA, and you know, you should have been scalped out of this one before it pulled back. And I do believe that your runners, they got the runners on this one. So no runners on that one. Then this is, again, this is a kind of a risky entry. It feels risky, but you got to think we're coming back to test the highs, or at least the next resistance area, which is right here. And this is actually two legs back to the EMA. There's one leg back, a pull back, and then a second leg back. So a second entry long. And we got all the momentum. All the stems are just about on the low side. We're back above. We tested the EMA twice. Another move higher. And there was actually a breakout pullback long right here, but it's not a very good one, so not a great entry in the market. And we just kept going higher. You don't want to be short in this market. And I will show you this, though. Notice that this is actually how I found this trend line. I drew these two that line right there first, just like so, and then I drug it down, and it fit right there. And so I was kind of looking for a turn down here anyway, but it turned out to fit perfect. And adjusted a little bit there, but you can see we're kind of starting to to drift away here and here and here, and that's a sign that we may have a sell-off, and I'll show you that in a minute, but let's get there. This is a second entry long during a two-legged pullback to the EMA. We got a kind of a triple bottom there. Only problem is you had to get in really high here after a big leg up and a new high, but it was worth the risk, I felt like, because we had not touched this trend channel line the way I had it originally drawn. After we got this pullback, I just kind of dropped it down to see where it fit the best, and it fit perfect right up through there. But you can see we drifted away from it again all the same. But even if you brought it right there, I think that's the best fit. So this was worth taking. I felt like this was worth marking. I took this trade, so I felt like it was worth marking. And we turned back down, and then now, look, we got a triple bottom down here. And what usually happens, they trap everybody. And we got this little breakout area right down here. We came back and tested it. We failed and went higher. So I actually, here it is. Here's those little matching, double matching lows. I actually went long right there. I dropped a limit order. It ticked lower, turned up, and a nice run up there. You should have had your runners here, depending on how you could have actually gone long here too, but it was a little more risky because of all these overlapping bars right here. But it was still a good entry, and it took a little while to work out. I got really concerned right in here, and I almost closed this a couple of times, but I decided to, leave my stop at break even, and this worked on out. And then there's a couple entries right here too. Notice that this is a breakout pullback from this right here, and then we went higher, and it broke a little bit higher, and it pulled back again, and then you got another chance to go long right there. It's fighting its way through, and notice it's making higher highs. That's a good clue that we're probably going to at least break out to a new high. And it was too risky. It was really too risky to go short here, although we've got a bunch of new pushes to a new high here. So if you did take this one, when it ended up in all these dojis here, I probably would have exited, but I marked this one in green. But notice we ticked higher, then we broke below the double bottom, we turned back up, and then we turned down and went. So that's a breakout pullback short. I marked it in green because it's a really risky trade going short on a day like this. But if you saw this one, that was the only way to get into this trade. And look at that move. And we hadn't been back. We've already touched this trend channel twice and even made a new high twice, and we still haven't come back to this side. And so you got to figure we're coming back to this side. But and here's something else to look at. When excuse me there, the market tends to make measured moves, and if you drug this down to here and you got to figure you got to move this one down here the same amount. And I'm probably really getting kind of ahead of myself. I probably shouldn't even talk about that, but that's one thing I've noticed. Let's say your line is right here and this one ends up over here, so you turn it down a little more and then you drag it down, and look what happens. You still overshot that somewhat, but it lets you know that's not and see how we pulled back and tested it. So that'll happen a lot. So that's something you can always look at if you're trying to figure out where the market might turn. And actually, let me put this right back where I originally had it and then turn it down, and let's see what happens right there. And you can see that right there. That's right about where we closed. And so just another little trick that you can try. I mean, I wouldn't take any trades off of it for sure, but when you're this far away from the EMA after that big a move, you know you're going to snap back at some point, at least to test this trend line. So it's just something to look at that might have helped you enter this trade. And then the last entry was right here. We got up higher, we pulled back, we touched the trend line, or we touched the EMA, we went higher, we pulled back one more time and created that little trap. And so this is along here thinking that, you got to be thinking we're coming to test this high, and that's exactly where we went to. It took a little work to get up there, and we eventually even got a little bit higher than that before. And we're still trying to get through there. It's not quite 315, and that has just been some really strong resistance right across there at 57.75 or so. We just have not been able to get through there. So, if you didn't find this trend channel, it was probably a tough day. And, I got a little, when we shot, well, you see we bounced right there. And that's a good reason not to buy blindly down here. It's better to wait for a break, because if you'd have waited on the break higher, it never came, and that would have been your clue not to get in yet. And this was the first bar that broke higher, and look what would have happened. You wouldn't have had any heat on that trade at all. So, even though I talk about doing this sometimes, buying these lows blindly, it's not good to do that on trend days. And you would think here you got the support, you got both the support area that's where we bounced here. You've got the trend line. I mean, everything's looking good for a trade right there. That's why I dropped my limit order in right there, and but it just didn't happen. It just kept on going, and I felt pretty good that it would at least come back to this area and let me get out at break even, and that's pretty much what happened. I think I got out with a tick, or maybe a ticker. Actually, I think I lost a couple of ticks right there, because I went long right here with a limit order. Yeah, and so I got out of here. I lost about 2 ticks, it looks like, either 1 or 2 ticks. So that's why it's not wise to do that sometimes. And you really need to know what you're doing. And even when you know what you're doing, you can have days like today where you get tricked like I did right there. And if I'd have just held on, this would have been a good trade, because I know when that, most of the time when you get a failed break lower, especially on a trend day, without a trend line break, you know what is generally going to happen. It's going to trap everybody and go back the other way. And you can see here we kind of had these ranges right here, and we kind of had this little range, and then we went higher into that little range, and then we went higher into this little range, and it was probably more like that right there. Because these were all failed breaks up there. We never really got prices to stay above that line. It was kind of the line it's fighting on. And if you look at these two, I bet they're real similar. Let's just see. There's the first one, and there's the second one. And you can see that, and here's the third one down here. They're all about the same size. You just jump from one little range. And so you could almost trade this like a range day, to a certain degree. You fade, you might have got burned right in here trying to fade this one. You could have faded this one. You could have faded this one. You could have faded this one up here. It's a little late in the day to be fading those. But anyway, just something to think about. That's another way to kind of find your targets. This is more of a trend day than a range day, even though we did have like 3 little smaller separate ranges that just kept working higher. So just something else to consider when you're trying to figure out where to enter or where not to enter, or where the pullbacks may come to, that kind of thing. So, but that was pretty much it for today. Just trying to think if there's anything else. Here's this first leg from the overnight. Here's your second leg. Look where it went to. And then we were working on a third leg, and it just never got there. But you got your 2 measured legs up, and you can see that. But until we got this break of this trend line and a retest, there was, it was really dangerous going short. And unless you were really quick right there and keeping a very tight stop, that trade's not hardly worth it. But there was another reason to go short there, other than the little trap or the breakout pullback short. It's a failed break above a double top. You got your double top and you shot above it. You actually shot above it once and then again, and it didn't. Usually this should continue on if the market's strong, and it didn't. So you might have even considered going short below that big bearish bar. But if you did, you got to keep your stop above it, because that's your signal bar. You just about have to keep your stop above or below your signal bar, or you'll get stopped out by the noise. That signal bar is generally the line in the sand. So keep that in mind. But I'm going to wrap it up. This is Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.